All right. Welcome, everyone. This is Anon. Nothing here is financial advice. I am not a licensed, professional. Anything that's in here is basically just my own opinion and just as a retail trader observing things. So, all right, let me go put this on the Discord and we will get started. Give me a second. Get everything going. All right, let's see. Still got that cough. Gotta get rid of that. Okay. What's up, Rari Gaming? What do you think tomorrow looks like? Tomorrow is going to be a big battle. That's what I think it's going to look like. It's going to be a big, big battle. Give me a second. I'm going to go pull up some options chains for us. Make sure that we got some stuff to look at tonight. Let's see how the Ortex data looks. What's up, guys? Today was a big win after a 30% sell-off from the tree shake, and yes, it was. Yes, it was. Let me pull up real quick some options charts because we're going to need those tonight. But yeah, I was going to say that was pretty big of us finishing green, considering what today looked like, because today could have been a lot worse. Let's see here. Alright, so I'm going to pull up the entire options chart from today and screenshot it real quick so we can bring it over and take a look at it. So I think today, I'm just going to kind of talk real quick, but I think today could have been a lot worse. And I'll tell you why I think that. I think that they were planning on pushing this down below 450, and their plans kind of got screwed up because we brought a little more volume than they were anticipating. They thought this was going to be basically like a day like yesterday, and they were going to be able to just spoof it down. And like, yeah, we've been watching. I'm sure some hedge funds are listening now. They've been clearly in, they bring in bots, they're bringing all sorts of things. But interestingly enough, we were watching them spoof. I mean, there was about what was the order? It was like 29,000 that they were using for a while. They were using that to just basically push the price down. Whoever was doing that was basically, pulling out the stops to make sure that the price was moving down. And they were trying to do it at key spots, and normally that would have worked, but volume started coming in towards the end of the day. And because of that, they did not get what they were going for, which was they were trying to get a little more, downward pressure. All right, let me just move this up a little bit, and let me get the call side and the... All right. So we'll have this ready to go. Let's save it real quick and just call it ATER 2021, 22. Okay. So let's check the options chains real quick. Yeah, so we're sitting right now at max pain, and that's where they wanted it. And I think they wanted to actually drop it a little bit more to try to shake out more retail. And yet we got some pressure at the end of the day. I think they wanted to be below it and then even run it down because if you actually see what they did, let me just kind of show you guys this. All right. So you notice the volume on these 350s, the volume on the $4, the volume on the 450s, and the volumes on the 5s all were a lot higher today. And what they were trying to do is that gamma ramp down. Basically, they were trying to buy a bunch of, in the money, puts and basically push the price down. If you look at some of the, open interest, there was already a good amount at the 5s. That's why we're, sitting there, they've already hedged these. Now, here's the thing. There is a ton of, volume coming in at the $5 calls. And this market maker at this point has not hedged those fully. I can tell you that because we would have been a little bit higher up. So this is going to be interesting what goes on tomorrow, because if we're sitting here and all of a sudden there were more and more of these in the monies that they're going to start having to hedge, and that pushes up maybe to like the 480s, 490s, then all of a sudden you've got to hedge all of this. If this, some of these maybe, bearish puts, but like there's going to be a good amount of calls that are bullish that are in this spot right here. And so, and then you've got more here and you got more here. And so they've got a nice gamma ramp basically to 8. That this thing could run if there was enough interest in this stock to just slap the ask, and then these guys would be, they're going to have to spend some money to keep this down if this starts getting loaded up. So tomorrow is going to be very, very interesting because the gamma ramp is almost fully formed on this side of, there's just a lot of pressure there. And then, you start just taking into account the next week. There's a good amount of in the money stuff next week, which they're going to have to hedge. There's also a ton of $5 calls. If you start looking in the future and you get to that 20th, there's a lot of in the money calls at this point, and if they go over 5, that May 20th stuff is going to be pretty interesting, because they're starting to load the May stuff now. I mean, they're going to probably buy more tomorrow and then the following weeks, but it's going to be super interesting what goes on with that tomorrow. What's good? Today was a great win for us. Yep. Excuse me. Ah, that one hurt too. All right. The FTDs are going to get delivered tomorrow or Monday. Will we see effect? So FTDs are T plus 35, I think, if I remember correctly. And so typically, they could have covered, any day before then. So it's not necessarily on that day. They have to be delivered. Like they could have covered them last week sometime. Let's see. So how do we know when the shorts start to fold? All right, Brian. So typically what you'll see is you will start seeing a large amount of buying pressure when shorts start to actually cover. And they'll short back down and wait. It goes in waves. So if we kind of let me just pull this out. Switch it to the 1 hour. So some of these buying, sprees here, that could be, and this was probably just market makers hedging, if I remember correctly, because the short interest hasn't gone down. It's only been going up. So these guys still think, and what happened here was there were a bunch of shorts that shorted it at $7 and they pushed it down, and that's what they're trying to do. But we're starting to curl back up. So technically, if you actually look at today, we're sitting right on the 200, the moving average. And so we went over it at one point. We were over here, and this is actually from what I saw from the Reddit, somebody bought 1 million shares. Retail investor bought 1 million shares right around here, which probably got us up over to the 5. and then they shorted it down, and they were spoofing during this. We caught them spoofing this section right here. Like, we actually saw the 29,000, being used to push down the price on lower volume. Especially like here, when the volume was really low, they were spoofing a lot. So, but yeah, I was going to say what it would look like though is they'll probably cover in waves. So you'll see a day where, you might have a bunch of buying, and then they'll be short in between. So you'll go up in steps. But typically what you'll see is, let me go back to when the last time it moved. I guess I have to go more to the daily. So let's do this, but let's move it to like the 1 hour. All right. Wait. No, I need to go here then. Sorry. Why is that not working? All right, let me try Weeble then. Give me a second. All right, so we're going to switch to the 1 hour on here then. And then, excuse me. Long time ago. There we go. All right. So this is how the other one played out. And let's just kind of take a look at the hourly. So they started actually really covering, I think, in this area. And you see they even covered in the after hours. And then they tried shorting it down, pushing it down. No, this plays over. This plays over. A little bit buying pressure. They do it in waves. Got all the way down to 6. And then it like moved up. It looks like it gapped up. And then they had this one large covering right here. And then they kind of kept it steady. But this is where you start seeing like real covering. Like they're actually like having to buy, if you look at the volume bars also, like they're a little bit more, Now, all this stuff is them buying throughout the day. And then it gets to this peak here. And then they basically say, it gets to basically like 20. And they said, all right, we're going to now short this back down. So that's what they do. They short it back down. And they get it down pretty low. This is massive amounts of selling. So they're shorting, they're selling, they've already bought like a massive amount of puts up here. They also shorted up here. So you see, pre-market during this day, it's $19.90, which is $20. When they opened up at like $16, it just dumped all the way down to, and this is retail just getting shaken out. Like it's very obvious. It's just retail selling. Like, the funny thing is, it's not even like, because retail doesn't quite understand how the market mechanics work, the volume isn't that great, but they got the price down really, really low because it wasn't like a super high volume day. Most people were like, oh, we made a lot of money, and so they took it, and so this is them just like panic selling all the way down. Well, here's the thing. So they got it all the way down to $9 from like 16. And well, it's technically like it hit a high of $9.90 or $19.90, but excuse me. But here's the thing: they had FTDs building up also. So these ones right here are them having to cover some of these FTDs that were starting to build up, and it ran back up to 18 here, and then same thing. Like once they feel like retail, it was like it's high enough, they'll re-short it down again, and that's the same thing. This time, though, there was a huge candle. So you went from basically, if you opened up here, they probably pushed up in the morning just to trap some extra bulls, and then they just dumped. So typically, though, this is what you'll see when they're actually covering. You'll see a good amount of buying, and then they'll short it back down. A good amount of buying, then they'll short it back down. And they'll do some of it in the after hours, too. So, yeah, FTDs get announced as far as the data. So the data comes out next week. And it should be at the end of the month, and we should be able to see basically the beginning of April when we went on to the Reg Sho. Because we've been on there now, I think, for like 6 trading days. All right. Very important that bullish momentum continues into next week. Yeah, I mean, that'd be great. I mean, if we can keep the volume up as far as like, if there's more and more people interested in this, that's obviously going to bode well because on low volume, these guys know how to drop the stock. That's the honest truth. Like, look at this. If you pull up the volume, there's volume here, 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 but then this is when they decided to attack the stock. And then on this day, there was like very little volume, and look what it did. It just dumped all the way down here. We got some volume back today, and it went up. Like, they tried to get it down even further. Like, they wanted to go up a little bit and then just short it down, and they couldn't get it to drop like they wanted because the volume picked up again. So they were having trouble because retail was actually buying up what they were trying to, like, spoof. This, though, they spoofed, and there was low volume. And if you look, I mean, we're completely oversold on the, even through the pre-market, and then they allowed it to go up a little bit just to cool off, and then they tried dropping it right here, and retail bought it up. Maybe institutions too, I don't know. But my speculation is probably retail were the ones buying at this point. All right. Let's see. So the closing price tomorrow is very important. Yeah, because it determines basically this option chain and how many things are going to be in the money versus and how many shares are going to be owed next week. They should technically be fully hedged by, the end of the day tomorrow. But here's the thing. We watched them de-hedge all of this stuff up here. So they're not hedged for this anymore. They're actually hedged for this. So if for some reason, all of a sudden tomorrow, there's an enormous amount of buying pressure, what ends up happening is they will then start having to hedge all this stuff down here that they were starting to de-hedge. They will start having to hedge the 5s, the 550s, the 6s, and they will start de-hedging some of these. So, like, it's basically like exchanging shares, and now all of a sudden you have to turn on the buying switch because they're not planning for the stock to be running up, and they will probably do everything in their power to keep it down and pin to 450. Like, they'll abuse their short exempts, but it all depends on, like, if we get volume tomorrow again, they might actually have to hedge these, and then we might actually finish, more like up here. Excuse me. All right, maybe I need to get some scotch. Hold on. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. I had to go get to my barrel, take a sip of scotch, and see if I can calm down the coughing. But yeah, tomorrow's closing price will be very, very important. All right, I saw some data regarding a large amount of FTDs delivered on Monday and Wednesday. I mean, let's compare it to what actually happened. So this is Thursday. This is Wednesday. Obviously, a large amount of FTDs did not happen this day. And then Monday was this one. So, I mean, yeah, so maybe they covered all of them this day, and they decided they were just going to let it run a little bit and then just slam it down because there was a good amount of buying here. So it's possible they could have covered both days in that same day. That's why you can't go off of like, oh, well, it's T plus 35. Like, they can technically cover anytime they want. So, they could have covered this entire week prior to it and reset a bunch of things. So, but yeah, we are seeing a lot of spoofing signals on the way on the downticks. they're basically just placing large. Yeah, Tanner said it right. It's 29K. They use 37, and once we said that, they'll probably use different numbers now. But they're basically putting up fake orders, like so on these right here, right? Normally, when you see like a buy wall or sell wall on the level twos, which come up here, you'll see them flashing down here, like what bids, what asks. What ends up happening is if you see like a large, they might have like 39,000, sell, right? And so what they end up doing is they flash that up right before, on low volume. It tricks like the algo into thinking that there's a massive amount of selling, so it actually ends up pushing the stock down massively, and then they pull it right before it actually hits. So they don't actually sell those, but it pushes the stock down, and then it also freaks retail out because retail sees a big bar coming out of nowhere, and so they panic sell. And so nobody was actually going to sell. The stock's just drifting down because there's nobody buying it. And so what ends up happening is they basically fool retail into like paper handing over, and they didn't even short anything. All they did was just flash the thing up, and it saves them ammo. So, I mean, but yeah, the whale came in right here, and he just said, "I'll buy all your stuff at 450," and just went on the way up. So, but yeah, they did push it back down, and then we kind of finished slightly up. So, we finished 4 cents higher. But that's pretty solid for a day that we probably should have gone back down and then entered in towards like the 420s, I think is what I was seeing. So let me do this real quick. Let me make sure I've got something up. See something. Okay, sorry. Were we having Sorry, I'm just catching up on the chat now. Okay, so what's good? How's it going, fun? All right. There's Goat in here. I'm behind on the chat already, aren't I? Okay, Trey. Buying pressure be good. Yeah. Okay, so he's asking, would more pressure tomorrow be buying stocks or deep in the money calls expiring this week? So like I said to you guys, like unless you're routing through IEX and you're making sure that your broker's actually making sure those trades go through on IEX, you're not hitting the lit exchange. And so for a lot of people, if you're able to route that way, then yeah, you can buy commons and that should be able to be, show up on the market. If you're buying though through a broker like a Robinhood or Webull or anything that's payment for order flow, and you're not set up for buying through like a lit exchange, all your stuff's going off exchange and you're not representing any buying power. All that's happening though is your broker within T+3 has to deliver some shares to you, hopefully lower than what they, what you bought them at, so they, could profit off those. But so it all depends. Like if you're able to buy through IEX, then buying shares obviously is great. Obviously not financial advice, but but if for other people, deep in the money calls or selling bullish puts, those are also ways of making the market maker hedge. So, Dan K. And do you think the large amount of borrowed today per Ortex was for tomorrow? It was like 1.2 net. Yeah, absolutely. Tomorrow is the big day. Today was like, okay, they were trying to get us down through spoofing. They couldn't do it. Tomorrow they're going to really push. And they're going to make sure that we don't fly up because they'll take those shares and they'll bid whack. They will waterfall. They're going to make sure they try to do everything. And what happened to ATER? Basically just kind of chopped around today. We went up to 5, came back down to at one point to like 430, no, 440, and then we pushed back up and we just basically finished 4 cents above. So it was kind of yeah. Stop smoking, Anna. Yeah, I don't smoke, so it's weird, but cash secured or cash covered puts help adding pressure. Yeah, buying common stocks does not add unless you're brokers. Yeah, so that I think we just went over that, so that's good. At the gym, soaking up all this ATER DD, good stuff. All right, so I'm just smoking an ATER. Yeah, I don't smoke, guys. I do have I gotta figure out what's going on with my. I have a hiatal hernia, which puts pressure on my esophagus, and then some of the reflux comes up. So I got to get that taken care of at some point. But I don't know if it's a surgery or what it is, but it does make me cough sometimes if it's, if I'm not taking the medicines. I didn't take it today. I took. All right, the last 2 days have definitely looked the same as far as volume, time of volume, spoofing, even the after-hour dumps. Yeah, I mean, they're not real original with this stuff. They're just trying to get the price down. They don't really care. So, yeah, have a good workout. Yo, yo, yo. What's up, everyone? Everyone's having a good time. Got like 168 people in here. Hey, hey. Thanks, Anon. Yeah, thanks, Brian. Thanks all you guys for being here. When you look at today, what do you anticipate tomorrow? I mean, I'm expecting them to really try to get this stock under 450. I mean, just this is what everything goes off of. Like, you don't have to be. People look at charts. I typically look at this first to understand what's going on because I need to know what incentive is greatest. Because when it comes down to it, let me just see. Yeah, so like everything's going off of this right now. For them, if you think about what's going to burn the most amount of money, and the answer is probably if you look at all the volume and premiums that are here and you add them up, you can actually, I think there's a tool that you can see who's, where, it's a mathematical thing where they calculate all the premiums on both sides, and Max Payne is probably 450 because of that. But I always find that they tend to burn retail more than they burn like the hedge funds so what they typically do is they'll finish right below Max Payne. So, like, if Max Payne's 450, they'll make sure it ends up 448 or 440 or 436 or something like that. So they do it right there just to burn out the rest of those retail calls because why not, right? We're a market maker. We can just abuse our short exempts that on those Fridays and make sure that we get the stock price exactly where we want it. I guess it's good to be king, right? FTDs do anything to our share price? No, it just lets us know that they're not producing their obligations. So brokers, like for example, when you buy a share through your broker, right? So say I go to Webull, I hit buy, and then I'm expecting those shares to be in there. Well, my broker, in this case Webull, I don't use them typically for trading, but if I was doing that, I would expect them to have those shares in there. But really what ends up happening behind the scenes is they have like T+3, which ends up being like T+3/4, like somewhere around there. Like that's kind of what I've noticed. They have to get the shares in there before then at some point. And so if they don't do that, for example, then it becomes a failure to deliver because I bought shares. They're supposed to be in my account. They had the 3 or 4 days basically to get them in there, and if they're still not in there, then they failed to deliver their side of the obligation. So I don't know that on my side. All I'm sitting there with is IOUs. But on the other side, it is what that's all going behind the scenes. So what happened was if we look at the days, I think around, so let's count back, what was it, 6 trading days? Is that correct? Is that where we're at? So each one of these is basically a day. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I think on this day or this day right here is when we went on to Reg Sho, meaning that it's the regulation, security. What was it? It was just it's securities threshold basically, and what that essentially is it's a when failure delivers get to a certain point. I think it's like over 5% of the float. What qualifies Reg Sho threshold? It is when, yeah, I was right. Okay, so it's either, here, I'll pull it up over here real quick for you guys to see. So in order to be on the Reg Sho, a security must be registered with the SEC and had 5 or more consecutive days of failed settlements. The failed settlements must be a size totaling 10,000 shares or more, or at least 0.5% of a security shares outstanding. So that's how you get on there. And that would make sense because we have this large run-up. They didn't have any shares really to begin with in the first part. So if we start counting back, and this is when we went on there, then we had to have 5 consecutive days. So if 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's perfectly lined up with. So they probably ran out of shares on either this day or this day. And so now they're just giving us IOUs. Essentially, that's at least what it appears like. I can't speculate, apparently, because some lawyers had told me to watch what I'm saying. So today was the first day of the week that was, yeah. So I mean, we got some buying pressure coming in, and like obviously the inflow was much larger than the outflow today. And so even though the price was suppressed, because I think I saw that it was something like 60-something% of the, 65. So about 65% of the retails, which is, basically 23 million, were routed off exchange. So, I mean, not every one of those is a buy, but at the same time, you have to figure there was a good amount of buying that didn't get to hit the lit exchange, which means that if retail was buying in, they weren't getting their orders put onto this day. So it would be interesting to see what happens if we do have a good amount of actual retail buying. What's going to happen then T+3, which would be, I guess this is Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? So it'd be roughly like Wednesday or Thursday next week, right? Right. So it's today plus 1, 2, 3, like 3 or 4. So sometime around here. So Friday, Monday, so Tuesday or Wednesday next week. If today was really a large retail buying day, they have until then. So it could be covered tomorrow. It could be covered Monday. It could be covered Tuesday or Wednesday sometime. But that's what I would at least expect is they would try to at least, buy at some point there's going to be a decent amount of buying at some point. And, I don't know if this guy routed through IEX. I don't know a whole lot about him. I just know, obviously, if you buy 1 million shares, which is, like 1/26 of the float, which probably already is locked up, then that's going to put pressure on them later on if he didn't route through IEX. But it looks like it must have hit the lit exchange because he bought around the beginning of the day and it went straight up from there. So he must have routed, or maybe because it was such a large order, it had to get routed through the lit exchange. So let's see. Can we do anything with the evidence of spoofing? Will the spoof come back to bite them? Yeah, if we submit it to the SEC and we gather enough evidence, you say, this is happening, and they have to figure out who it is, and that's their job. If you're breaking the law, then if you hand people the evidence and then are waiting around to hear if it's been solved, then as long as we stay on them, we'll probably actually get them to find somebody, at least minimum. It doesn't help us when we're dealing with this, obviously, but All right, and can you point out the OBV levels do not correlate with the price movement, especially on Tuesday and Wednesday? Sure, hold on, let me get... Okay, let me just see something real quick. All right, so this is Thursday, right? Yeah, Thursday is right here. This is Wednesday. So you're talking about these 2 days. So the last 2 days. So let's pull up those ones. So what we have is obviously the money flow peaked out right here, and then they started getting downward pressure here. And so it looks like you had some bleeding off of the on balance. At one point, there was actually, it looks like some people buying, and then buying pressure. So, like, was there spoofing in here? Probably. But you can see some of the money starting to flow out because you have like downwards, like right here, money's flowing out. And then it kind of caps out here, and then buying starts happening again. So you start going up again. Your OBV, though, it's not on like high volume. So like you're starting to see at least a spike with the money flowing. But they start bleeding off here, and they go actually negative on the distribution side. And then over here, looks like you've got the money flow slowly bleeding off here. It's getting down. And then you've got the volume picks up, obviously, here. And so that's your peak right there. And actually during that, it looks like for some reason there's some accumulation going on. That's, yeah, I see what you're talking about. It's interesting. Let's see. Because that's supposed to ignore volume and solely focus on the price, but obviously it doesn't do that. Yeah, that's an interesting one. And at that same time, obviously we had dipped into oversold, and yeah, we had this down here also. Then this is some distribution right here, and there's like no volume, obviously, like down here. And we stayed that way, obviously, through the pre-market. And then today, obviously, the money started flowing in because we had 1 million shares bought. And then up here, you have the volume increasing up until basically they decided, okay, he's done buying, and then we can short it down now. And I think their goal was, they weren't expecting this, obviously. So I actually think they were expecting to keep going down. I don't know if I can zoom out on this chart. I think they were expecting to actually push the price down here, because if you look, they were trying to get it back into this, like, falling wedge, and they ended up actually getting surprised, I think, by this buying pressure. They tried to get it down here. They used some spoofing, and then they couldn't get it, and then retail was starting by the end of the day. So no, yesterday there was more inflow and we dropped big time. Yeah, I mean, sometimes that happens because if you think about it, they don't count for retail. I can't see yesterday's, I can just see today's, but essentially what's going on is, if retail's if all the orders are like small to medium size and we're getting routed off exchange, then none of that's actually happening for buying pressure, but it's inflowing into the stock. So you can go down tremendously, even though, because they were spoofing. That's all that this is. Like, the more retail understands how this works, like if you were, for example, bid ask is over here and they're going back and forth, and then all of a sudden I throw up a 49,000 sell order, the stock's going to react. Even if that stock doesn't actually hit that 49,000 sell order, it thinks it's there, so it starts pushing down the stock rapidly and hard. And at the same time, they usually shuffle off some shares long, with the high frequency trading, and that's how they can get these large, spike downs to look so scary for retail. But for me, I know what we hold, so it's just a matter of being like, all right, well, do I have enough, can I find some money for some dips? So, let's see. It seems like Friday would be a good chance to see some volume. Yeah, I mean, like, I would love to see retail get some volume on this thing. I mean, like, and if you can't route through IEX for buying, once again, not financial advice, but like, I would, I'm looking at maybe some like 350, selling 350 puts just to make them give me some shares going into tomorrow, just to make them hedge that, because or like selling 350 puts or buying deep in the money like 3 or 350s, because even if they go for it tomorrow and they try to get it down, I don't think they can get it down here. And so those ones, they're going to have to deliver me shares by next week. So, and I know, those ones are going to be the ones that they eventually have to hedge, and we're probably not going to end up getting that much money. I don't know if I'll sell puts. Maybe I'll just buy the, in the money calls. The premiums should be pretty low by tomorrow, especially with theta. So, yeah, but it'd be great if we could actually catch up and then stay in the fives. And then once those fives start having to get hedged, then if we could, essentially run. I mean, because if this starts having to get hedged, that's going to push us up towards this. And then these start having to get hedged, and they'll start de-hedging all these. And that's kind of how it works. And so, like, this stock could flip and go bullish real quick, and just make back all the the losses of here and just push up. And that's when retail typically FOMOs, because they go, oh, we were wrong. Like, I sold here. Maybe they sold on this big candle here. And they're like, the stock's going to go down more. And then it kind of evens out today. And then tomorrow, if it rips, they're going to be the ones buying back in at 6. And they were like, I sold at 4. Then I bought back in at, 6. And they're going to get a worse, average. But, it is what it is. I hope whales are aware of this and save their volume for tomorrow. Yeah, I hope so too. Anon smoking weed tonight? No, Anon doesn't smoke weed. Anon's got a 1 and a 4-year-old right now. They'll be 2 and 5 in the summer, but everyone liked the live video and subscribe to his Patreon. Oh, thanks. Appreciate that, JW. Don't die, Anon. We need you. I must be really far behind. David Webb, buy some cough drops for that angelic voice. Thanks, David. Just getting to it now. I apologize. I do have a major cough. I think the scotch is helping, though. What am I drinking? Bourbon or whiskey? No, I actually drink scotch typically. It does help my throat. Let's see. And I don't drink. I'll just have like 1 or 2. I don't usually go more than that until I have like if it's a Friday night and I'm cutting loose, then I'll have plenty of drinks. But during the week, I typically just have 1 or 2 if I'm like having a bad cough. Or is spoofing bad for us? Spoofing is illegal, so they're not supposed to do that. Alan, thank you, Alan. And, thank you, Trey. That's awesome. Good, this is for good luck tomorrow. Thank you. I hope you make back 10x what you just gave me, Trey. Thank you so much. Very illegal, very uncool. Yeah. I mean, I'll when YouTube someday pays me, I'll make sure I buy some Aterian with it. I don't know when YouTube pays me at this point right now. They sent me an email saying it would be probably like weeks or months, because they have to like get stuff together, and I have to accumulate a certain amount of like pot, I guess. I have to like gather enough stuff that it's worth it to transfer to me. Yeah, but spoofs tricks the system, and yeah, that's essentially, and they do it on low volume. So if we get a lull tomorrow where there's not a ton of volume like we got on these days, that's when they can really move the stock down, because they're clearly cheating. Like they got nothing to lose at this point, because next week we get to see the FTDs, and if they can't get the stock down, they're going to have some problems. So they're definitely doing some stuff that's pretty shady. And I bet you right now, if we went back and looked at the tape from, I guess that was Tuesday, we would have been like, yep, they're doing it here. We died down here with the volume, and boom, we started bleeding. And I bet you right here, when the volume died down, they were able to spoof those too. And then we caught it today because we actually were looking for it. So, but yeah, let's see. Anon's getting rich while we're getting poorer. I'm not getting rich yet. I was gonna say if Aterian goes up, then I'll start getting rich again. But at this point right now, I had some theta decay and I was not getting richer. And we were up 4 cents. I guess that's good, but that's not a whole lot. but yeah, at this point right now, the Patreon, I haven't received any money from. I think it's the same thing for new Patreon members. They, but all that money is going to go back into basically making sure I am able to pay my bills, and then if someday I'll be able to stream for you guys full time, and then I'll also buy some tools for the Discord and try to get some extra scanners and stuff and tools for some of the wrinkle brains in there to help out with finding new plays and trying to make it worthwhile, obviously, for the Patreon members that have donated. So yes, thanks, Trey. We got 226 people in here. Oh, did we lose some? Do we get some bots yet? I haven't seen any bots. Am I just maybe they're not here yet? Do you think we hit the bottom of this? I mean, here's the thing. We broke out of the downtrend. The downtrend was from here. You can see it. I know it's a little harder, but when it's steep, it's a little easier to see. But, we're in this downtrend. This would have been a continuation of the downtrend if we kept going down like this. And I think that's what they wanted to do. They wanted us to just be like, oh, this is over. Like, play. And if honestly, looking at the chat yesterday, you would have thought, like, everyone was just, obviously moods were running very, very sour. And it's hard. Like, watching hundreds of thousands or hundreds, whatever what you're invested, whatever's a lot to you, we lost a lot, especially if you're playing options too, because those swing so hard. Like you may be up 50% on options, and then by the end of the day yesterday you were down like 80% or something going if you had weeklies. So like it was rough. And obviously that it's hard to control your emotions when you're trading, and that's something that I've tried to do as well as I can, because as soon as you start actually thinking about like this is money and stuff like that, and you're not looking at just the chart, that's when you start losing focus of like what's like my DD is based off of stuff that I found, and at this point right now I don't see how the math checks out with the amount of volume that we've had over the last 44 days since we've been on 100% utilization. Like, there's no possible way that we traded 1 billion shares and retail doesn't own the entire float. Like, there's just no way. I need to do this. Tomorrow, someone remind me in the Discord, there's a video of a guy who literally goes out and he finds a really small float company, and he ends up buying the entire float. And so he goes out and he's like, I bought the entire company. So the stock price obviously flies up. He buys the entire company, every single share that's available that's not an insider. And then he watches and proceeds to view this, the brokerage or the shorts or whoever who was on the other side, pushes the stock price down like 90% when there's no shares. Like, he bought every share that they had on the market. But yet somehow they sold off and like pushed the stock price down like 90% or something like that, trying to get him to sell. And he owned every share of the company. There was no possible way they could have had that. But because they have this settlement period, their job is to basically try to shake you out. And so he was laughing, and he brought it before Congress, and they were like, well, how could this happen? And it's because our current system is still set up the exact same way. We could have bought up the entire float back here, in, where are we at? Sorry. I need to do this. We could have bought up the entire float back here. Or it's 210. Yeah, like this was our earnings around here, right? It was like the 8th or something like that. Yeah, it's right here, right? Let's see. Earnings was March 8th, right here. So that's when earnings was. And that's when we ran 100% utilization. Look how many days we've been since then. Like, we ran out of, or shares became very hard to borrow right here on this day. And look where we're at now. Like, we're up a good amount from this day. We've traded 1 billion shares since this day on a stock that has 26 million free float. Just doesn't make sense. So, yeah. Hey, Anna, what happens if the volume falls off completely? Will these FTDs still make the sky? Yeah, I'll be honest. The FTDs that you guys are talking about, they could have already covered them back here. So, like, don't rely on FTDs, especially the ones that were prior to April. These ones that, when we got onto the Reg Sho, meaning that they ran out of shares probably like here, and we've now been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight days, or 6 straight days on the Reg Sho. So we would have ran out somewhere like here-ish. That's this whole stretch right here is going to be what matters, from basically the 1st, which is here, until like the 15th, which is like here. That's what we'll see next week, or and those ones will matter way more than the ones that happened prior. So, and remember, FTDs are not like, you don't add them together. FTDs are cumulative. So whatever the highest number is that you see that day is when they started stacking up to really high numbers. Maggie says, can you explain bullish puts? Yeah, so all that happens is you are selling to open a put. So if you buy a put, it's bearish. But if you sell a put, it's bullish. I think I said that right. Let me make sure I said it right. If you buy a put, it's bearish. And if you sell a put, it's actually bullish. So what ends up happening is you commit to buying that share if the stock price falls below. So say, for example, we're sitting here at 469 today, right? That's what we finished at. So we're here. We finished here. Say tomorrow I go out and I say, you know what? I'm going to sell a 350 put for next week on Friday. So if I go out here and I look at the bid ask, I can see that they might pay me. Actually, we have the chart here. So right. Let me see if I can pull up what next week's looks like, or even for this week, if you really just wanted to make them, hedge to tomorrow. But like whatever you want to do. But tomorrow, if I was buying a 350, selling a 350 put, what I would get is the bid right now is 12 cents. So that means that they would pay me $12 per contract. It's not a huge amount of money, but they would pay me cash that goes into my account, and then I get negative shares in there that are basically my end of the bargain, because I'm selling a put. So I'm basically promising that if the stock price goes below that, I'm going to buy it no matter what happens. So say tomorrow comes and say I bought it for tomorrow. So I bought I'll pull it up here so you guys can see. So if I bought like a $3 put for tomorrow, right now they're not willing to even sell those. And tomorrow they definitely won't be selling those for money. But like if I wanted maybe a 350 put for tomorrow, if I didn't think they were going to be able to push it down to 350, I might be able to get like 1 cent or like $10 for it. So you just do that number times 100, and that's what you get. So, or it would be $1. Is that right? Is that right? Let me grab a calculator. Just make sure I got that right. 0.01 times 100. It's $1. So give me $1 for it. Like that's all they'd be willing to give me is the $1 premium if I was going to sell 350 puts. And if the stock price goes below that, then I get assigned. So say for example, we get hit really bad tomorrow and the stock price ends up 342. I then I promised to buy those at 350, so I actually have to pay 350 per the strike, even if the stock price went lower than that. But if, for example, it runs higher, they don't want to sell me that. They don't want me to buy that back. So what they'll do is they'll just let me keep my $1, and then if I'm explaining that right. So like for example, if I thought tomorrow $6 if I was going to do the $6, right? If I really felt bullish, and this is not something that's smart, I wouldn't do this because we're not there. We're sitting down here at max pain. But I'm just giving you an example. If you were trying to collect a large premium, you would look for a put. You click on this little tab here on TD at least. It opens up and says buy or sell, and I would click sell on it, and then at that point it would show me sell to open, and then I would go and say, okay, I want 15 cents for this or 16 cents, and see if it fills. And if it fills, then what ends up happening is I get a negative balance in my account that will show up, but they will actually give you cash, and there will be cash sitting in your thing. But you have to hold the amount of cash for those puts if you're doing a cash secure put. There are ways of doing it naked, but that's very risky, and I do not recommend that for any retail trader that doesn't understand those options very well. I wouldn't sell naked puts, or because you can get yourself in big trouble and get yourself margin called that way real quick if you're on margin, or if you're just cash, they might not even let you do it. But yeah, I just want to. Hopefully that is a good explanation. Clear as mud. I don't know. Let's see. Do you recall the stats on the $40 squeeze, the short interest as well as the utilization? I didn't trade Aterian back then. I can tell you right now, it does look a little weird on this one, to be honest with you, because shorts, I almost think that this ran up for different reasons than everyone thinks. So I think there was some short interest, and I think there was. But the volume was super low on this. Like you noticed right here. Let's just take a look at these two things right here. See if you can see it still. Let me close this up so I can let you guys, hopefully maybe it's a little bit bigger. All right. Notice down here, there's like no volume. So like this stock was just going up and up and up on really low volume. And I don't know if it was a hedge fund pumping it, or if, like who knows. But something was going on here where this stock moved up, and that's why I said this is a highly manipulated stock. So was it a long hedge fund and they were just slowly kind of creeping it up, and nobody was paying attention? Because when it got up here, there wasn't even shorts. Like shorts weren't even interested in Aterian when it was up here, but shorts got interested around here when the shipping crisis happened, and then boom, right here on earnings, they really attacked the stock. They gapped down. I think it was, they gapped down around here. That was like a large gap down, and then they kind of came up with this cup and handle, and then, that's a secondary. So this one was more interesting because this one I think is more similar to, where we are, versus this one happened on such low volume that I'm not even sure why it happened. If it was a mixture of just some short interest being pulled off, because before that, they actually were, I think, at $1.1, and then they just had this slow, methodical run from down here at 142 all the way up to 40. What was that, 48.90, 99? So $49. So it's really weird. And then all of a sudden they were down here at 3 again, and then they just get absolutely some volume, and retail FOMOs in on the second run up, and then now we're here. And so the difference though is this one started a little differently than this one. This one was more of a slow kind of burn that was okay there, and then it kind of picked up volume, and volume maxed out. This was 250 million on a 15 million float, if I remember. It was maybe it was 25 million, but it was a super low float back here, and they ended up obviously having tons of FTDs and all sorts of things, and that's when Yaniv came out and said, there's naked shorting on this stock, and and then since then they just got buried. But this one's a little interesting because this one was that slow burn and it built up. This one started out with a bang, and so what I think actually happened was, I think somebody either read one of my DDs and kind of understood what was going on. And, maybe it wasn't me maybe they knew it all along and they were following the stock as well, but I kept writing that someone smart was one day going to look at what was going on here, and they were going to realize how overextended the shorts were, and they were going to get absolutely pummeled. And I remember I wrote that. If you can go back in my DDs, and you can probably find when I wrote that. Like, I kept saying that at some point there's going to be somebody that comes in here with volume, and as soon as the volume picks up, these guys are going to get absolutely squozed out. So right around here, this moved, didn't it? I think this moved. I don't know how to clear a drawing on this. I don't ever use this for anything. I can do that, I guess. All right. So what I was going to say was I think, trapped the shorts here because the volume was just so massive that the shorts didn't have time to kind of figure out what was going on. And then they continued it, slapping the ass, just pushing the price up. And that's when the FTDs start piling up here, and then they go into Reg Sho basically right here. So I think the shorts got caught with their pants down by a long. Like, that's honestly what I think. Is like either like a huge amount of retail came in at the same time, which I don't think happens because they're not coordinated enough to just be like, oh, So, but something definitely happened where an institution was like, we're going to trap these guys. And as soon as they did that, they now just, all they have to do is just, every time we get into this, like a slump a little bit, they just buy up, right on these moving averages. You can see, that's what they were doing all the way up. And then once they did it, they probably took some profit. And now we're dipping back down. But the question is, will we bounce? Here we are for today, right? And then we're sitting here, and I think on the other one I was able to show you guys, we're sitting right on like the 200. And so that's going to be the one that's going to be super interesting if we bounce above this because, what do we have on this one? Which one's this? That's the 9. So that's the 9. This is the 200, the dark blue. So like we're sitting right on top of it. And it looks like we're starting to oscillate over to the bullish side. Some buying, going on. Because, this was obviously like the worst portion. You see this, it's growing, it's getting bad. Now we're starting to come back over because we got oversold. This is when the RSI obviously is much lower, and then you can see there's obviously some this was some selling pressure right here, and then there was some distribution happening right through here to drop it even in the after hours, and then now we're oversold, and now they've got to buy some back, and so they bought some, or that was that whale doing it, because I think they were really trying to just drop it down into this range right here to shake out retail, but instead retail got some interest again and propped up, and so now tomorrow it's going to be super interesting what they try to do, because like I showed you guys, all it will take is some deep in the money calls being bought, like a $3 or $3.50 being called, and retail saying, I want those shares and I'm going to hold them through the end of the day. Because then if you exercise them in the beginning of the day, they can just de-hedge them. But if they're held into the end of the day, and once again, this is all just kind of how market mechanics work. It's not me telling you guys to do something. Obviously, everyone's a retail trader here. This is not financial advice. I'm just saying the way that it would work is if retail was to, for example, buy deep in the money calls or sell puts, even though you're not going to get any premium out of them. What that does is it forces the market maker to actually start hedging to make sure that they have those shares. And if they decide not to, then they're going to go into next week naked. And that can be dangerous for them because if they don't have the shares, then they have to buy them on the market. So I kind of got sidetracked. Sorry. That was about the $40 squeeze. But yeah, they basically did it on low volume, and I'm not quite sure why that happened, to be honest with you, because I wasn't in Aterian at that point. So if I sell a covered put and it expires in the money, if it falls below the strike price that you sold it at, then you would have to buy those shares. Show your face. You got to be the face of ATER, just like Trey's Trade and DFE. Yeah, so I'm trying to remain anonymous. I mean, I've got young kids at home, and like if this all goes, starts going sideways, somebody, I've got a buddy of mine that has done some documentaries, and he's actually in Aterian as well. I don't know if he's on here. I won't call you out by your name yet, but I'm just saying, he had said, we'd have to show your face, and I was like I got to talk to my wife about that because she honestly doesn't even know kind of what all this is. She thinks this is all my silly stock stuff. So you know, at home I am not a big deal. I wear my Asics and I've got cankles. People in the Discord were teasing me. Yeah, I'm not as cool as you guys think I am. All right, what's the worst case scenario for tomorrow? I mean, like, honestly, we're at max pain right now. So, I mean, the worst case would be maybe bleed down into the 4. I don't think they can get it much lower than that, or else retail will just keep scooping up stuff, and then they're going to make this even worse because I don't think retail's selling anymore. I think at this point they're just like, retail's buying and holding, and now, like, for example, the Aterian sub, I was looking at the statistics on that. I think I posted them in the Discord, which is, let me just see if I can go back and look. I'm in the wrong search bar, but I think if I go back to my last comments, I want the newest ones. Okay, here it is. So, and this may have changed, but as of like 4 o'clock today, in the last 7 days, we've had 622,000 like views. So like 622,000 views in the last 7 days. And I was really mainly just going to short squeeze for a while, so I wasn't even posting on Aterian. So those numbers will probably get bigger as this kind of goes on, and now we have a thing again. Let's see. Yeah, unique users. We had at least in the last 7 days, we've had close to 50,000 people come into the Aterian stock, and that's a lot of new people, or at least individual people that don't have the same, obviously IP and all that stuff. And we have gained 3,000 people in the last couple of days. So this thing's starting to move and it's starting to go off. So it'll be very interesting to see where this kind of, because it's, I wrote that this was going to be a very, very interesting week, and so far it has been because, we got some buying pressure on, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So, we've gone up, we've gone down, and then, will we stabilize and finish around 5 something, or will we drop into the 4 or stay at 4, just chop around all day? It really just depends on volume, because the days we have volume are the days that we typically either stay still or go up. Days we don't have volume, here's volume. Look, we went up. Here's volume. We chopped around. Here's volume. We went up. That was a lot of volume. So, if you look at that, we moved up quite a bit. We went from, 2 something all the way up to 386, something like that. 390. So we bounced off the resistance right there, and then we used it as support. And so the question is, will they try to get it back down to this 392, 393 level? And then do we bounce off it again? Because that's a really bullish sign if we bounce off that areas of support. So, and the other thing is, or we could use the 200 and this moving average and this 9. Could we bounce off that and move up? Do we fall through and then test the supports again? These are all good questions. I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know, but theoretically, if a whale bought 10 million shares tomorrow, wouldn't the stock instantly squeeze? I'll be honest with you, I don't think it would, because I think that they've been taking in orders, and they're just hiding them in the options chains. I think they're doing anything they can because they're from what I was talking to DZ, and I know some of you guys heard DZ and I talking, but DZ was saying that he's seeing a lot of options that are like getting put into the chain that are very large orders, and they're down the road, and they're being so. I think what's happening is they've sold all the shares, and now they're trying to just like keep these FTDs. So they're basically creating. This is all speculation. So I'm not saying this is a definite, but it looks like they're trying to move some of this stuff into the options chains because it's literally overflowing at the gills. There's not a lot of shares. Like I showed you guys, like 25,000 people. Like that's how many people are on StockTwits looking at this stock. Now, all of them are not bullish. I know they do bearish and but like, let's say they were, between Aterian sub, which is like 11,000 people, and let's say that, there's, more than, on StockTwits, it seems like there's more bulls. So let's just say that makes up the difference. So 25,000, retail investors just between those two subs, not including just like the random people who ran across the ticker on an article, bought some, a couple of hundred shares and are just holding them. If 25,000 people just bought Aterian right now without any consideration that retail has been buying and holding the stock for months, it would only take like 1,000 shares each person to lock up the entire float. Like, we've traded 1 billion shares since Reg Sho, which was, where's the 8th? Oh, I'm on the 1 hour. I need to go daily. But like, where's it? Right here. That earnings call. That's where we ran out of shares for utilization, at least. Like, at least it's really hard to borrow shares. And we've traded 1 billion since then. Like, that's crazy. So, but yeah, like if 10 million shares were bought tomorrow, you would think that, honestly, I think they would let us buy 26 million shares tomorrow and they would still not squeeze. Like, that's just because they're in so much trouble right now that they're trying to hide things any which way they can. Because this right here, they were not expecting. This came out of nowhere for them. And so now there's a problem because I think that they sold a lot of shares and retail held on to more than they thought. And they were trying to shake us down, and they were trying to get rid of all retail to get rid of some of the diamond hands who held on around here and have just been bleeding like down 90% from some people's accounts. And nobody was willing to sell. So now all of a sudden we got them trapped as far as like, whoever came in that, I think it was the institutions, whatever it was, they came in and they, look at this. I mean, they just bought a huge amount right off the bat, sent all of our stuff up, and now they're trying to get rid of it, but we're still buying. And so like, you don't see a ton of distribution. Like purple is supposed to be distribution. I don't see a ton of distribution. It's all pretty much like just buying and like it's curling up again. And are we going to buy even more? Like, how many shares are floating out there right now? Like, and that's where GameStop had that issue. There were just shares upon shares just floating out there. And so I know people are like, oh, there could be never another GameStop, but support.com did the same exact thing. Like, they didn't have a large float. I'll have to go and see if there's any ability to see their old chart. Maybe not. Let me see. Let's see if we can do it on this one. Maybe they'll... Here. This run right here. Let me see. So here's the daily, right? So they were like sitting here and they were getting some buying pressure. Let me see if I can move it to like a 1 hour just so you guys can kind of appreciate how this all went. So look at this right here, right? So they were chopping around. Let's go from here. So in August, they were chopping around. This is August 24th. They run up a little bit pre-market, chopping around. They have to buy some, right? Because this is a market maker essentially hedging. What ends up happening here, though, is crazy. So we're sitting here at like, I think they had the entire float locked up at like, I think it was like $5 or like $10. I can't remember what it was, but they had the entire float in the money. And so this market maker basically had to keep hedging, and obviously they don't want it to squeeze, but they're trying to suppress it. Like each one of these wicks, they're suppressing the price, they're suppressing. Now they're running out of problems because they just have so much inflow of calls that are in the money. And what ends up happening is they just pop. Like they can't stand the pressure anymore. It goes up here, right? So they open up and they gap up from, what was it, like $20. They open up that day at like 30 or, I think it was 30. They get pushed down all here because they don't want the thing to pop, and then they just end up having to buy. And so this is when you see a bunch of buying pressure all the way up to $60 a share, and then they just short it back down. So, I mean, like, that's a pretty significant. I mean, look at all the buying. Like, this is all buying. They had to cover some during the night, buying, and then by the morning they were just trying to get it under control, and then they just let it fly. And at that point, they got it back down. And, so I just wanted to show you, like, that's how it can go. It can just be, like, all of a sudden one morning, like, we get a little bit of pressure, and then, I think, was this a Friday? Let's look at that. 8/6/21. Let's look it up real quick. Go back a year. Back 1 year. And 8. It was a Friday. So on that Monday, the 9th, right here. So this was a Friday. So, I mean, this would be like the ideal situation would be like all of a sudden we ran up to like $8 tomorrow. And then obviously this is all fantasy, but like in my head, we run up to $8 tomorrow. And then basically over the weekend, they start covering. And then by the time Monday rolls around, we're sitting at like $12, $13, $14 a share, and we go up and hit 20 or something like that, or whatever. And then they try to short it back down, reset the FTDs, but like it goes in waves, and that would be really cool. Obviously, I think everyone would be really happy if that happened, but not necessarily going to happen. I'm just speculating, like what would how would that work as far as like, but it happened on a Friday. I think it was a long weekend, if I remember too. It was like over like a Labor Day or whatever holidays in there. So, but yeah, I'm not sure if they could easily buy 10 million shares and probably it would stay exactly where it's at. I mean, you might have some buying pressure, but like at this point, they're just trying to hide it. So, when utilization goes way down along with SI, that's when they're recovering. I must be really far behind. I'm sorry, guys. GME took 4 months to squeeze with a lot of red days in between. Yeah, I was going to say that's very true. I looked at the chart the other day and I was comparing them, obviously, and during this run. Let's see if I go to the daily. Yeah, I need to do it like. Now I gotta customize time frames. Let's do 3 years on the daily. Here we go. I mean, no, is that still daily? Okay. Yeah, so for them, it started back in like, I think it was November. So this isn't even, like, technically it was November. So the GameStop squeeze actually started technically back here, I think. Let me zoom out because it's not a very pretty. I need to go in from there, though. Okay, so here's October. And I think Ryan Cohen joined the board sometime around here. Maybe it was like around this earnings. I can't remember exactly. So the stock started going up, right? And I think around here-ish, if this is about when I found out about GameStop, because there was DD that was out, that was back here, if I remember correctly. And I remember being like, that guy's buying GameStop and like doing calls, and like I was like, what an idiot. And obviously that was DFE's on Wall Street Bets, and it wasn't until I actually read his stuff that I was like, oh, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. And you're right. Like, you can't have 120% institutional ownership with retail also owning all this, and those numbers just don't make sense, you know. And he knew that, and he also knew that the company was fundamentally undervalued, so he could, you know, he knew what he was doing because he was a professional. Like he was an industry professional who had gone to school, studied finance, and understood how all this works. He's a smart guy, really smart guy, because he basically caught them with their pants down. And I mean, look at that. So, but yeah, it took basically from like here to actually squeeze. Now we're more in the accelerated part because we've already started moving. For them, it was kind of like a slow roll into there, and then once I still remember it was January something. It was when Andrew left from Citron. It was like, we're going to show you why these Reddit kids are idiots, and I just remember taking that super personally, and I remember sitting there going, I'm going to go ahead and where was it at? It was around here-ish, I think, because I think we went to 40, and then we went all the way down, and we hit what day was that? It was sometime around this time frame, and we were in the 20s, and he said we were going to, or it was in the 40s, I think, and then he said we were going to go down to the 20s again, and that's when like all hell broke loose. And then at that point, we started seeing margin calls, and once we saw margin calls, then everything kind of went nuts. And I am not getting, yeah, that's a better. It's the time frame. Time frame screwed it all up. Okay. Anyway, but yeah, GameStop was a fun one, so I was in that. Yeah, and I tried my best with that one. That was obviously one of those real disappointments that I couldn't help protect more people. I called the DTCC for SPRT. I called the transfer agents. Nobody had any news. There were brokers who didn't even know that the merger was happening, and it was happening at the time. And I was calling them, and I'm like, "Do you guys have any information on this merger?" And they're like, "No." They're like, I guess they call them like. They have a department that basically goes through like mergers and acquisitions. And they're like, they haven't received anything from the company yet. And I'm like, it's literally supposed to be happening right now. Like, how is that possible? And they're like, yeah, sometimes they just, it takes a while. And I'm like, can we read? Like, is there any documentation? They're like, just the stuff that came out weeks ago. And I'm like, you guys are literally in the merger process right now. Like, how? It was a bad thing, and I couldn't get answers, and at that point I just told everyone, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen at this point. I'm already down so much, I'm just going to hold and see what happens. And yeah, it did not go well, and I wish that one still is one of my like worst experiences with trading, because I just couldn't get answers. I called all around. I mean, I even talked to a lawyer, a merger lawyer, and he was like surprised because I think he worked out of London, and I called him on like a Sunday, and I was like, hey, can you talk to me about this thing? And he was like, absolutely not. And then the next day they announced the surprise merger. So I don't know if we freaked him out, but he was like, yeah, you can't be calling here and talking to me about this. I'm like, well, I was just trying to get information. He was like, yeah, call investor relations. I'm like, well, they're not answering my questions. So investor relations from Gree wasn't answering, and neither was support. So it was a bad deal all around, and that should have been a sign that the fact that they wouldn't even get back to me. I'm like, I was trying to be polite, but I was calling, I was leaving messages, I was emailing, and I couldn't get any answers. So all right, so moving on. Fintel shows Aterian at number 1. Could hedge funds cover by just buying and shorting it back down, since they have so much control over the stock? It really just depends on FTDs. Like, if FTDs are like completely like out of control, they won't be able to do that. So let's get out of this part. Here, now we're at least looking at Aterian again. Okay. Yeah, September. I guess that's when Ryan called. It was like November or September of the GameStop. Yeah. Apparently we have 206 people watching and 21 likes. I guess hit the like button then. I must be so far behind. I'm looking at where the scroll bar is. That's why it takes me forever to do these streams, because I'm like so far behind always. I get like off on a tangent, and then I ended up like, all right, let's see. For us, we started in the beginning of March. It may take June, July. I mean, right now, I think May is kind of like the time frame, because that's just getting so built up. I think something happens before then, like whether it's retail, whether it's institution that just say, for example, the catalyst is May 5th. We have earnings, right? What if actually Aterian beats on earnings? Like, they're going to short it no matter what. But like, what if Aterian's earnings are not that bad? And this is May 5th. And the options expiry on those is May 20th, which is here. So what happens if there is a beat on earnings and all of a sudden all hell breaks loose, because now institutions are buying? And institutions actually buy on the lit exchange. So if retail's already locked up the float maybe 1x, 2x times throughout this time, and then all of a sudden institutions start buying again, woo, it's spicy. Yeah, so I've been calling the SEC every single day, leaving messages. I've also been submitting things with my email on it, and I've emailed them multiple times, and I have not heard back from them in like 2 weeks. So it is what it is. I saw that we've been on the threshold since April 12th. Is that right? April 12th. Let's see. So April 12th would have been here-ish. Yep, right here. So that would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So we're 6 straight days on Reg Sho. Yeah, we've been on Reg Sho every single day for the last 6 days, because it takes 5 days to get onto the Reg Sho. And if you look at our like run up, say for example, this is where they started losing control. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So the next day would have been the 12th or 11th or 12th, because that was a weekend. So yeah, if hypothetically if they lost control this day, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would have been the 11th, and so the next day would have been the 12th. Yeah. So, and then from there we've been on it for 6 days. So, and they still have not gotten themselves off the Reg Sho, because my guess is there's too many shares floating out there that are not being delivered. So yeah, we are still currently on the Reg Sho threshold as of tonight, and we'll see if that changes tomorrow. But at this point, I don't, unless we had a ton of people sell out during this time frame from retail that allow them to reset the FTDs, because that can happen. If they get a good amount of shares from basically this whole downward movement, it's possible they're able to at least kick the can down the road slightly, because other people, obviously they're going to trade how they want to. If they sold, they're not, reading the DD and thinking that this is a thing, because the price, like I said, you're going to have to ignore the price for a second if you really believe the math is right on this. And I do, so that's why I'm holding. And, I like the company long, and I just think at this point it's fundamentally undervalued, and it is what it is. Like, I'm going to hold the shares until I think it's time to do it. Let's see. What's the next thing? Somebody asked, would this be a light squeeze or a long drawn out? I mean, we don't know. Mark, I wish I could tell you a definitive answer and also tell you exactly when it's going to happen, but I don't have that ability. So, doesn't the low volume prove spoofing? Yeah. I mean, it's easier to move a stock down on low volume. And if you look here, we had low volume this day, and that's the day that we bled the most. We had low volume on the second half of this day, and that's when we bled the most. On low volume, they can move this stock down easily by just spoofing. And you don't believe me? Look at all this. There was no volume any time of this. So that's what they're trying to do. All right, so I guess I'm starting to get really far behind. Thank you, One Spider Jerusalem, for that. I thought the SEC just investigated Pornhub. You're pretty close on that. They did get in trouble for, I guess all the higher-ups were
going on Pornhub instead of doing their job. We got this going back to 19. Yeah, I mean, we may go further than that. I mean, it really depends on how many shares are floating out there. I mean, this can burst at any time, and they may have made things worse. What if they sold out the entire float back? I'm not getting stopped. Let me do it to Aterian. What if they sold out the entire float back here, and then they got it down maybe a couple million, but then all of a sudden we just ran up again, and now they're absolutely they're screwed. Maybe we had 30 million shares locked up around this time frame, and then all of a sudden, or not 30, yeah, I think it was that, because after the private placement, the shares got restricted for some of those. But hypothetically, if we had 25 million shares just hanging out here, bleeding off some throughout the downward pressure, but then all of a sudden just got this massive spike in volume, we're now over the float. We've locked up the float, and we locked up the float back here. So that's what I would see with that. Do you see the super chats? I'm still getting. I'm gonna be honest with you. I have been seeing them. I'm trying to thank them when they come in. So far behind at this point that people's messages are disappearing now, and right where I'm at. So, I'm trying to get better with that. But I did see. I think something Jerusalem was the last one I saw. So I must be super far behind. The bots are sleeping. Oh, good. The bots beep boop. Kidding. Let's see. GME didn't shoot from $5 to 400 in a day. It took 4 months and a lot of up and downs. Yeah, exactly. So people need to be patient. People need to kind of figure out, what your risk tolerance is, and this is not an easy play to hold on to. Like, it's just like a GameStop. It's just like it's going to be bumpy. It's going to be choppy, and it's not for the faint of heart. Like, I've got a buddy of mine, and every day he texts me, and he's like, "It's down 30%. Like, what are you doing to me?" Like, I'm like, this is how these go, and he just he doesn't have the stomach for these usually, but he still does it. I don't know why. He just he hates it, but he's like, "This is gonna pay for my Europe trip." I'm like, "All right, then leave it in there and see what happens." Poor taste to make that joke when a lot of people got murdered by hedge funds the last few days. I don't know what the joke was. I must have missed it. Sorry. Things are disappearing, like I said. For those who want to see it, the curious, yeah. So the naked shorting of the shares that didn't exist. Yeah, there's going to be a whole bunch of cases like this, and they do this more than you guys think. Like, they sell shares, and they just figure we'll just knock retail out, and we'll scare the crap out of them, and they'll all sell, and then we'll be able to reset all these FTDs. Okay, are you going to do DD tomorrow? I know it's time consuming, but rallying the troops on stock twits. I mean, yeah, I'll try to write one tomorrow, because I know people tend to like them. I don't, sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what to say anymore, because I keep putting out pretty much the same information, because nothing's really changing right now. But, yeah. So max pain, how is max pain calculated, and what exactly does it mean? Just so you guys see it again, I know some people that have been listening for a while know this already, but max pain is just a calculation of all of these. You basically take whatever the volume is for today and the open interest, and you basically can multiply it from when. Now, every single day, these numbers are going to change for the bid ask and when people bought it. But this has a cash calculated basically for the entire thing. It's basically, if you take all these numbers and you've figured out when they bought their shares or their options contracts, they're worth a certain amount of money. And so all this money gets added up, and wherever the maximum amount of basically retail, or even in this case institutions, can lose, that's where they're going to try to put the price. So if there were a ton of in-the-money puts, right, and there was not a lot of call volume, the max pain might actually be higher, because they're trying to burn some of the puts. But in our case, because we're so call heavy, they're trying to push the stock down to burn all these premiums, because retail and other institutions have paid a lot of money for these premiums, for the stock, and you've got basically what the equivalent of 2.3 million like a mil 5, like, what is that? Is that 8? No. Is that right? No. That would be about 800,000, 300,000, or maybe it would be close to 400,000. So, like, the max pain is going to be where basically the market makers would make the most amount of money by burning both sides like equally, basically, to figure out where they profit the most. That's what max pain is. And it usually means that, when we were sitting up here at 6 and we were sitting up here at 7, max pain at 4, of course they got it, because, we had buy pressure too, but it just, the couple days that we didn't sustain the buy pressure, it just dropped. And so that's why volume is so important, because if retail's buying, it's hard for them to drop the price. If retail stops buying for a couple, for example, 2 days, they were able to spoof it all the way down and drive. And once they were spoofing and driving the price down, they were buying these puts pretty cheaply, and they were able to slide these down, because then it becomes like a reverse gamma ramp. Basically, you start de-hedging these and you start hedging these, so you're selling shares onto the market, and it causes a lot of, like, obviously bleeding. Okay, let's see. Hopefully that answered the question, but it's where basically the market maker would lose or make the most amount of money, and where everybody else loses the most amount of money. Wilma Waste, and we're going to use the bullish pressure and have the ability to rehedge and dehedge using spoofing. Yeah, I mean, that it all depends on volume tomorrow, so that's what's going to go on. Let's see, FINRA numbers. Let's see, short exempt, I guess, was slightly higher than yesterday, but we've had it like 1.2 million. That day was crazy, because that they were basically just suppressing the price of the stock. Let me see if I can pull that up for you guys so you can see. So if I go in here, right, and if I go to short interest, and I show you down here, they've got 60,000 shares. Here's your cost to borrow. Here's the FINRA volumes, right? So we had. Have they updated? They finally got these in. Okay, so on aggregate total volume, it was 29 basically, which is 35%. This one they had 35 basically. Okay. So just to show you guys, this is where Alan had put the numbers. It's basically showing you, so this is your non-exempt and this is your exempt. So this day right here, though, was pretty crazy, because normally you don't see that kind of short exempt volume. But the 13th, if we go to the chart, would have been this day right here. So we were about to pop, and they had to use probably short exempts to get us down and under, because if we kept going at that rate, we would have actually popped through and probably actually ended up needing to hedge all those calls. And they could not allow that to happen as a market maker, because they would not have those shares. So therefore, they used their short exempt status to basically, abuse the system. Unfortunately, that's just how it works. So. But yeah, so this is not an extreme amount based off the volume. Yeah, it's not that bad. But yeah, this day was crazy, and then it's still kind of high here. This was another high day. So, and I think we missed the 4th, and so I've got them written down somewhere in my spreadsheet. So. But yeah, those typically will do that. People are asking about, let's see, what is Patreon? People are nicely, donating 10 to, depends. There's different tiers, and we'll have something, going on with that in the future, where I'll be able to call out plays. And I want to start working with the ones that have obviously dedicated a lot of resource towards me to try to get me to stream. I want them to be able to kind of research with me. I want to teach them how to do that, and how I go about that. So they'll have to, obviously they'll be working with me on stocks that we're researching, try to figure out if they're good plays, and then we'll go give it to some the next tier to kind of like review, and then we'll push it out to the Discord when we like something, and just let people know. I just want to make sure that it's the right thing. I don't want to like have me be go, oh, this looks like a great play, and then it absolutely tanks, and then obviously everyone's like, why'd you call that? And so I want to make sure I do my homework on some of these stocks. All right. Hi everyone. My question is, why do the shorts keep going up? And my question is, why would shorts keep this up? Okay. I remember the last week hearing that the 22nd is a big date. I mean, it's OPEX. What happens tomorrow? What affects the shorts? I don't know, Tara, what the 22nd, the significance of that date is to you. I mean, maybe people were looking at like the T plus 35, and that was supposed to be an FTD day, maybe. I don't go off the failure to delivers as like gospel. I think those guys can cover whenever they feel like it, and so they may have covered it days before. I don't subscribe to that. If you figure if we had like a really big volume day, like here, maybe I'd be excited because maybe T plus 3, but it wasn't huge. But let's see. I hate trading in shitty markets. I always forget that I can buy puts. Yeah, I mean, you can always buy puts, or you can also sell puts. You can do lots of things in the market. Who's modding the Discord? Acid's in there. We've got a bunch of people that are modding it now, just because we started getting a lot of people. Like, I remember when we started the Discord, it was like, I don't know, like 20 of us, and we were just talking about Aterian. And then I had to like build out some channels, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I still don't know what I'm doing in there. But I mean, I did try at least to make it more of a thing. But I've looked at other people's Discords, and they're much better than ours. I don't know how to group it and make it better. So if anyone has suggestions, you're more than welcome to, maybe I'll make a channel that people can suggest how we structure it, because at this point, I think it's probably way too convoluted. There's tons of channels. There's tons of like excess that probably doesn't need to be there. Sometimes less is more, but it is what it is. Thank you, Shameful. I'll buy a banana. Shameful, you should have made it 142. If you know that joke from the Discord. Thank you, though. You can commission someone to draw an avatar for you and put it up on the screen. Yeah, I guess so. If anyone wants to submit stuff like that, I'm more than happy to figure out how to pay them. If it's really good and I can do that. Because right now I'm just using this like exploding head thing that I found on the internet, and I don't have the rights to it. So I mean, I'm not big enough or anything. I don't think anyone cares, but I should probably do that. Just curious, when shorts exit their position, does it ultimately affect the price going up? It all depends on what's going on. So like you could have a short covering and then at the same time another shorting, and like so that's going to mess with obviously the data, because you might see the shorts going down even though some shorts were covering. So it gets convoluted in that sense. But typically when they start having to actually cover, you'll just see a bunch of buying pressure. So, and then they'll try to get it under control, and then they'll try to burn out some calls on the weekly or the that's what the market maker is going to try to make money any which way they do. And like you can see based off the oscillators, like it's possible that we go down. Like it looks like we're cressing down, and we may go into next week and we may sell off a little bit, or we could fight this and bounce off resistance and pop up again, and next week we gain even more. It's all going to depend on volume. See this right here? When we had volume, we were going up every single day. When we lost volume on these ones right here, like we had some volume here, but like when we lost the volume on this day, that's when we bled the most. So if we can't sustain volume, we're just going to have to wait till the FTDs come out next week, because that's going to really affect what's going on there, because they do supposedly have a timeline for those. Let's see. If you're learning from Anon, hit the like button. Thank you. Like I said before, you're welcome to sell and take profit if the group averages 6 to 9. Some people got in at 11 to 14. Yeah, I mean, like anyone's able to buy and sell when they want. Nobody, people keep being like, what are you doing to what's going on with that stock? And I'm like, I think people understand the math behind it. Like, you can't have that much volume. You can't have this much interest in a stock that's that small and think that the float's not locked up at this point, especially because people have been buying and holding for like a year now. Like, we went through all these, we've been through like 4 earnings, I think, at this point, something like that, or getting there. So, the question is going to be, let's see, the last time we really moved up, like this oscillator was just down, just bleeding. Like, we were just down here, so, but the last time this moved up, you can have it where it moves red, and then you go back green. Like, so it doesn't necessarily mean it has to go down right here. Like, you could have 2 reds, 3 reds, and then boom, it spikes back up. So we may deal with the same thing. We may have another, red day. Maybe we have another green day, and then the oscillator is going to continue going up. Like, it's hard to tell at this point right now what, there's no perfect tool to show you what's going to happen. It all is dependent right now on retail sustaining this volume or institutions coming back in and sustaining the volume. People are going in and out of this play right now, and that's fine. That's if they're trading it. But I think the more and more people that understand the math behind it, I think that's where we're starting to like gain some traction, because people are going, wait, how is this working? Like, how could they possibly sell that many shares to retail and not have the float completely locked up? All right. So if a whale bought 10 million shares and it wouldn't squeeze, how the hell is this thing going to squeeze? Because eventually the FTDs become just too great, and they either just make them close, which is like, that's something they can do. Like, the clearinghouse can be like, okay, this is over, and we're making you clear, we're clearing out your position, and then you'll just see one big line because the computer will take over, and we'll just see buying pressure. Or they just have to start resetting some of these FTDs by buying, and that's going to cause the stock price to go up. And then when the stock price goes up, more retailer buys in, and then it's a self-perpetuating loop, and that's how you end up with a gamma squeeze. 17K shares, awesome. Thanks, Wilma. Been holding for 7 months. Yeah, there's a lot of people holding for a long period of time. All right, we need Wall Street bets, but that won't ultimately happen. Post to Wall Street bets elite, 250K. Yeah, I mean, we're starting to pull people from other subs, I think, and they're buying the stock, and then they're getting at least exposed to the DD. And from social media perspective, we need David versus Goliath. Like, these hedge funds are basically like putting this company under, and there needs to be a narrative out there. Like, I don't like what they've done to this company. Like I don't like bullies, and to me, these hedge funds basically bullied the crap out of this small cap when they were having trouble. A short hedge fund, what's their point in the world? Like, what? I mean, I understand, like, you have to have people that call out like bullshit, like Enron, but like at the same time, like, when you start abusing companies just because like they're struggling a little bit, like, I don't mind you shorting it when it was $20 here. Like, I get it. Like, probably wasn't worth it there, so you short it down. But this is where I had an issue. Once we went here, this is when they sort of closed their positions. They should have closed their positions back when we went to 345 or was it 245 or I think it was 245. That's when they should have bounced off, and they should have started closing, because they were super profitable. But no, they pushed it down even further, and then they were trying to push it down even further, and it's like they were just bleeding this stock dry and seeing if anybody would come and notice, and nobody was noticing except for the people that were holding Aterian, and so. Are there any other mods on there? Do we need to make more mods? I heard Anon is DFE. I am not DFE. Mod here. So Alan's a mod. Roaring Gator. You guys are funny. Sorry, I thought we were talking about the Discord. What tool is he using? Is it free? This one? I know I'm very far behind Vanessa Martinez, but this is Weeble, and the other one is Thinkorswim, and both of them are free. This is like the Weeble desktop, and the other one is the Thinkorswim desktop. So hopefully that answers that question. Is there a point when they can't buy any more? No, they'll just keep selling shares. Like, that's what I'm trying to get to. The point I'm trying to get to is they will keep selling you shares and trying to hide the fact that they ran out of shares. Like, it just, that's how the system works right now. They don't get to a point that they're like, oh, there are no more shares. As long as they're willing to do this T plus system, like, blockchain is so much better because blockchain instantly settles. Like, you don't have to be like, well, we have to wait 3 days to figure out if we can get it. Just happens right away. We have the technology to make the stock market super efficient, and they don't want to do it because they get to do this. This is so much better. Wouldn't you love to be able to just be like, yeah, we ran a stock up and now we're going to run it down because we're going to shake out retail, then we'll get all those FTDs reset and we'll be fine. Like, that's what they do. All right. I watched a video about the entire market went down, except for we went up 4 cents. So not the entire market. Bloodbath all around. And yeah, I mean, they were trying to get us lower, and we actually provided some buying pressure. So my buddy put 1,000 in Bitcoin when it was booming, and then went up 82 grand. He left it thinking it would go up forever. He lost almost half. Yeah, I mean, that happens with crypto. There's a whole bunch of things that can happen. But if there are a bunch of synthetics, does covering turn into a game of musical chairs? Yeah, essentially once they start covering, it becomes they're just trying to reset some of these FTDs to keep it going. They're going to try to trick everyone, think they, oh, it's over. Remember, they told us. The bots told us to sell at 7. The bots told us that. And what happens? We reject off 7, we go down, and then we bleed. And now they're using spoofing, and they're trying to like get us to believe that everything's over. You guys should have made your money at 7. If you held too long, that's your fault. You're just a dummy. And then they were trying to basically just drive the price down. And that's their goal. Like, they're going to try to do that. And they're going to see if they can get it in this area, and we'll just see what happens with volume, because at this point it could turn into a daily bull flag. If this comes out and then it just takes another leg up, then that's what's going to happen. And then when you look at Elliott waves, you go up and you down and then you go back up again. Like, that's kind of how it would work. It would be here, test here, and then you would probably hit like 7 or 8. So, and then we have gaps up there too, so it's possible we fill some of those gaps from before. And during Monday of the spurt squeeze, my options were moving pre-market, which I've never seen before. Any idea how that's possible? The IV could have been just spiking so greatly that they were. I mean, normally you're right; they're just frozen. But I'm just wondering, like, if the IV just spiked completely, would you have at least seen the options growing because of that? Let's see. Hold on. It's just another scam. Corrupt, I feel. I don't know. Power corrupts. Yeah, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, like, this is how this stuff works. And so, like, the more you actually learn this, though, you can not be as phased. Like, when you're watching market manipulation happening, you can just be like, that's market manipulation. As soon as we get volume back, it's going to go back up. But the problem is, obviously, if retail sells during these times, then that obviously is going to be harder for it to get volume back, because you need kind of retail FOMOing in, or you need institutions buying. You need one or the other. So, bot coming. We're still on the radar. Cough, cough, cough. Yep, I am still coughing, but I feel like it's gotten better since I started drinking the scotch. So let me have another sip of scotch. All right. That morning was euphoric. The SEC has not called me back. Blah, 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 blah. Wow, Anon has a big cojones. That's awesome. Let's see. Yeah, Dan, it did change degree. And I was going to say, and that was stupid. Like, there's corruption that happened there. I need to go back into the options chain. The problem is I got so busy with Aterian that I haven't been able to like go back. But like if I had like a solid week, I would love to go back into the options chain and prove that the market maker was suppressing the price. All right. Because I think there's a lawsuit there, honestly. I showed it to a lawyer, a securities lawyer, and she was like, yeah, so there's something here, but we're not going to go through this. Like it was a class action, and she's like, honestly, it's not enough money for us because they're a big firm. They were the ones that had like the largest, they had the largest settlement ever, class action settlement against a publicly traded company. So I went to them thinking that they were the best. I got this woman to at least talk to me, and then I've been sending her like things, and she's like, yeah, so like that's not big enough for us, but I can introduce you to some lawyers who might take that on. But when I talked to the other lawyers, they were like, listen, so like we're not going to put up the money for this. So if you guys can bring us evidence, then we'll represent you. But like we don't have the resources to go through and actually like, you know, scour the stuff with forensics, you know, forensic accountants, and you know, it's not big enough for us for that. So I was like, all right, so. Because I wasn't sure how big I could get. You know, there's only like 10,000 people that were in SPRT, so. Aterian's earnings have been good all along, and they've been decent. I was gonna say, like, you know, what would be nice is the shipping containers would go back to a normal price, and they don't have to pay as much, because they would have been profitable last year if the shipping containers never happened, but unfortunately they did. So, just joining in, your DD's awesome. Thank you, appreciate that, Matthew. Hit the like button. YouTube's algorithms like to see high numbers. Man, I wish we could short the SEC. Finally, something worth shorting. Thank you. Shameful, appreciate it. Anna, if we pay for your ticket and hotel, will you fly out to talk to the SEC in person? Yeah, I mean, like I'd go over there and talk to them and say, hey, what the F? Like, because at this point, like, I'm wondering if I just show up at their office, say, you know, would they let me in? I'd go. Yeah. I don't care. I mean, I'd bring all the evidence I have. Be like, let's go over this. You guys are right. Dan says, the SEC is as competent as Tarifa. Wait, what's with FUB? I don't know what FUB is. What's FUB? Enjoying an old-fashioned with some Hootstatter rye. Nice. Cheers. I'll drink to that. Hopefully we'll have a good Friday, and we'll be able to go into the weekend doing that. Yeah, I mean, are you dying, coughing up lung? Yeah, it's like this some days. It is what it is. I wish we didn't ban the bots. It was a pretty safe place for them. Yeah, I guess we haven't been getting any bots recently. I like trolling the bots when they come in here. Free the bots. There are actually people behind them, probably. I like the one that broke character. It was like, yeah, I'm getting paid to do this. Don't sell. I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but Scotty Drippin was your favorite. Gary Bird. Rasheed Wallace was my guy. Yep. Gary Bird. Was that you guys on WhatsApp? All right. Hey, Bub. Kind of seemed like my brokerage didn't like it when I tried to DRS. Yeah, they don't want you to DRS because they don't have your effing shares. Your brokerages are not on your side, and it's not sitting there. That means that if everyone DRS their shares, I guarantee you would see a massive spike in volume because they would actually have to go buy your shares. Like, it's kind of insane to think about it, but like, when you have your shares at a brokerage, technically those are their shares, and like you have quote unquote a right to them or a cash equivalent. So sometimes when you start reading through like the brokerage actual like fine print, you find out that those guys are not actually on your side. In fact, they could just give you a cash equivalent to whatever the stock's worth and not actually give you your shares. Like they're supposed to be there, but they can fail to deliver. There's all sorts of loopholes they have. So like I'm just saying, brokerages, I'm sure, will not be happy if people all tried to DRS at the same time, because it would create basically a huge green candle, because if they never bought your shares, they then have to, because what will end up happening is when you need to transfer shares over, they need to be there in their account. So if those guys didn't buy all your shares, they have to buy them then on the market. So, yeah. I will buy puts on every other stock they pump in here. Might make money that way. Who's short rating? He means Fintel short. Oh, what's the Fintel short rating? I mean, it's number one on the squeeze. So just go on your phone and link Anon's video descriptions. Let's see. Yeah, deep in the money calls half ST exercise one contract. Yeah, I mean, you're actually better off holding it throughout the day if you were trying to, like, because if you exercise them right away, that creates the opportunity for them to de-hedge those ones that you have. So just throwing that out there. Not financial advice, but it is what, that's how you would keep them better off going all the way to the end of the day. That way it's hedged. Let's see. I imagine that is due to them being able to cover over shorts after pushing down the price. Yeah, I mean they always try to push down the price before they cover. Like if you look at like, for example, like GameStop. GameStop before they ran up recently. Here, look at this. So they dropped them all the way down to 78 because they knew they had to cover, and they would get them back up to like 200. Right here. They drop it down because they knew they had to cover. This was, obviously turn off the buy button and it goes all the way down. Get down to like, what was it, like 20 or 30? It was like, yeah, $40 a share. They dropped to 38. And then in the middle of the night, like the evening, this spiked up between the 2 days. Like, you can't see after hours on this, but like literally, like it went from like $40 a share to like 300 in like 2 days. It was crazy. So, but they typically try to push it down as deep as they can if they know they have to cover. So, yeah, but like perfect example. They pushed it all the way to 77, and then it hit a high of like 2 something. So, I mean, that's what we'll probably see is we'll see a dip before the rip. Yeah, we're still number one on the Fintel squeeze tour. If we had more mods than regulars when it first started. Damn bots. You should trademark your voice. Thank you. I missed the laser eyes. Yeah, it seems like everyone does. I feel like I'm getting caught up now. But you have 4K in your account. You have to buy. I guess you guys were talking about maybe if you're exercise. Yeah, you have to. If you're going to do that, you have to make sure you have enough money in your account to actually do that. But let's go back to Aterian, just because I don't want to. Which chat is used there for ATER? I'm not quite sure what that means. Maybe I'm trying to get through these notes, but I just want to make sure. Let's see. Rise, volume, rise, volume, rise. Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, if we can summon, some volume tomorrow, if we get, people interested in the stock, that'd be awesome, because whenever we have volume, it's hard for them to push down the price. They need these, quiet periods where they can just sneak those spoofs in and drop the price. There's a guy on Yahoo telling everyone to buy $10 calls from a Someone got stupid saying it's a way for market makers and hedges to hide shorts. So I think so this is a misconception. So everyone thinks it's a whale when honestly it was probably a hedge. So if you're, for example, a market maker, you put out a huge order of $10 calls. You're doing that because you need to make sure that you're able to protect yourself if the stock runs. So if Aterian decides to run, you at least have a place that you can cover at. So that's why they put a large call, like $10 call likely, is because they need a backstop to say, okay, right now the stock was, $7. We're going to buy a May 20th, which is a couple weeks out. If this stock was to run and get up to 15 or 20, we could still cover those shares at $10. It's all math to them. Like those market makers do this, every day. There's mathematical models, and that's how they, figure out what would make sense. Wilma. So they're not completely wrong, but it's not technically. Yeah, it's a way of market makers to. It's not so much hiding shorts, but it's giving them a backstop where they can cover shorts at a determined price. Hopefully that makes sense. We can lock up this float clicker DRS. I mean, yeah, that's an option. I will tell you, just because I want to be transparent, that if you DRS your shares, you can't sell them through that place. You have to basically bring them back out of the brokerage. But it could cause immediate, problems because if, for example, they didn't have your shares, they're going to have to buy them. And if, you're fine holding on here, if you're not interested in selling at, $5, $6, $7, and you say I'm just willing to DRS my shares, and if once it gets in the the teens, then I'm willing to put them back in the brokerage. That's up to you. But everyone's going to do what they going to do. Nobody's telling anyone to do anything. Can you speak to the huge sell candles we saw today? So we actually didn't see sell candles so much as we saw some spoofing happening, and I think we showed it if we go to the 5-minute. So these ones right here, you saw large sell orders go in and then disappear. That's what spoofing is. And so these huge sell candles right here that you're talking about, they're artificial. But once you scare retail will start selling. So that's essentially what you probably saw as far as the sell candles go. The SEC is ran by former Wall Street shills or future shills. Yeah, I mean there's obviously huge conflicts of interest. If you paid the SEC to uncover crime and gave commissions based off how large the crime was, you'd have really smart people working at the SEC, and you would be seeing cases get closed rapidly. But there's no incentive when you're a government employee that no matter what you do, you make the same amount, and it just that's the difference between corporate and government. Sometimes it's there's no fire underneath somebody's butt to hey, we need to do our jobs, or else somebody will do it better than us and take our job. There's no competition. There's no it just not knocking government employees. It's just it is that's the nature of it. So yeah, so there's multiple ways of keeping the price down, but yeah, you can sell through a transfer agent. They aren't a brokerage. They will use a broker, but they do have sell buttons. Yeah, you'd have to talk to Philadelphia about it. I had asked them about it. They told me that you may have to transfer it back to your brokerage depending. So Computer Share, for example, is different than Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a much smaller office, and they don't have a system like Computer Share does. Computer Share is a huge company that has very large clients and very large amount of people holding through them as a transfer agent. This one is much smaller. I talked to them on the phone. That's how I got on their information and wrote the DD on it. But yeah, it sounded like they couldn't sell through them, even though they're the transfer agent. They can't sell your stock. So I think that's the only disadvantage. So it's really up to whoever's. If you want to do it, I did it with. I had a good amount of shares that I just said I'm going to play these options for this one. Then I've been buying shares since then, but I haven't DRS the new shares. So Oh yeah, there's plenty of different transfer agents besides Computer Show. Computer Show is just one of the largest. So like a lot of the big companies use them, but some of these smaller companies like a micro cap, like or a small cap, they all use like ones that are much cheaper because it'd be way too expensive for those small caps to afford to use Computer Share. All right. So any other questions? We're at like 11:50 or 11:11 right now. I mean, obviously, everyone wants to know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know, but if I was to speculate, and just kind of guess, I think volume is going to be the key factor. They're going to try to attack this down. They want to get it under 450. This is probably going to be the big battle. It's going to be in this area right here. Unless there's some sort of volume that all of a sudden comes in and they can't get it down, and then this is the thing. Once they run over 5, if it's midday and they're having trouble keeping the price down, this stock is going to get really interesting really fast because they, I think, de-hedged all the 5s here into here. And so if somebody bought like 1 million shares, price went back up, and then they've been bleeding it through the spoofing part, but then we came back up. If we continue that upward pressure and break out and start actually forming an up channel, if they start having to fit, around this area right here, they would start having to, fully hedge the 4s, the 450s, the 5s are starting to get hedged at this point, and that's going to put upward pressure on the stock. Now, once you press over this, it's going to end up making the 550s go in the money, and then this is where you can get a gamma ramp. On the other side, if they have to start de-hedging the puts and start hedging the calls, you could move very quickly, because it's on Friday, so the theta's going nuts and the gamma's so much increased. So it is what it is as far as that goes. But yeah, I mean it's going to go one way or another. If we get volume, we're going to go up, or at least we're going to chop up and maintain and maybe end up higher. Like maybe like we finish like slightly over 5, or maybe even 550. But if we really get volume, then we're going to go higher. We're going to really test what's going on. If we get low volume, then I expect us to probably be somewhere down in this area right-ish here by the end of the day. So it's all dependent on volume. So if if you know people that might want to buy this stock, or if you want to buy more, like this is going to be one of those things. Or if you want to play options on this and do all that things, there's lots of different things that you can learn. But I'll go over and put the link to the Discord one last time, and we will go ahead. So come join us in the Discord. It's fun. There it is. Some people are going to be buying more tomorrow. I might buy some more. We'll see where the price goes. And yeah, I'll link up the Patreon just because if you guys want to make me a full-time streamer, and if my wife told me if I could get enough people to actually contribute to these, if I can replace my income essentially, then she doesn't mind if I stay home and stream and do this full time. So good night. Yes, you're my best friend too. I haven't listened to all your previous streams. Do you have a degree in finance? Do you work in finance? I'm just finding this stuff out, and you've educated me tremendously. So no, I actually don't have a degree in finance. I don't work in finance. I don't work in anything that's even close to finance, actually. But I've learned this stuff over the years, just being a retail trader and kind of following the markets and being in chat rooms and studying and reading books. And so I've kind of taught myself a lot of stuff, and I want to share it with retail just because, I feel like one of the biggest problems is retail. If they knew more, they wouldn't be as afraid when they're trading. But because they go in only with half the information, it's really hard for them to, make good decisions. If you go work for like a hedge fund, or you go work for, an institution, they teach you all this stuff. they don't do that with retail traders. You just kind of go out there with some money and guess on things, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And like half the time you don't know how to read a balance sheet, so you're going off hype on Reddit, and then you're buying shit stocks that are like, warrants are like diluting it, and you don't even know what's going on. You're yelling, this is, cheating and collusion, and really you're just actively diluting. And just these are the things that I wish I can help retail more with, because if you're listening to somebody and they just go, yeah, well, I mean, look at this filing, they're actively diluting this stock, that's why it's going down. And well, that's not what people on Reddit told me. Well, people on Reddit sometimes are dumb, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, I read through people's like DD sometimes, and I'm like, you guys don't even know what you're talking about. Like, they miss like huge things that are in filings, and like that's not something that is acceptable. If you're, I try to be very honest with my stuff on like, the DDs. I'm not making up facts. I'm pulling all this stuff from public information that you can get yourself, or at least through a paid site sometimes. But yeah. What books do you recommend as a beginner? We actually do have a free section inside the Discord, Snow Angel. If you go to the Discord and you type in market education, go that hashtag, and then go to fundamentals. The very first post I ever made, I linked a bunch of PDFs, and they're all free. Like, I mean, the Discord is free. The links I gave you guys for the PDFs are free. It's through a buddy of mine that just put all that stuff out there. And the goal was to get retail to learn, and I didn't want to put a paywall around the Discord. I mean, at some point, people are like, "You got to do it," because you're just getting too much. They're like, I guess they're saying that it keeps some of the the bots and the things out if you put a paywall up around it. But I'd like to keep it free if I can, and because I think retail needs to learn this stuff, and so if I can help teach them, that's what I'm going for. We'll see. But yeah, whenever you get to where you're going, you can look back and say, wow, yeah, that makes sense. It's so much easier if you learn how all this stuff works. Like, if you knew that they were just spoofing here, it's not as scary. If you knew that they were just cheating and on low volume, they were just walking this price down, I mean, it's so much easier to just be like, yeah, well, that's what they did. And so it's not that much scarier. So I've only started trading and just paying attention to the market, but I've learned more from you in the past couple of weeks than buying. And yeah, so I mean, I'd love to do this for you guys all day long. I mean, I love this stuff. Like, this is what I like doing. I nerd out on the market stuff, and like if I can help, we found some good plays so far, like in the Discord, and it's not just me. People have brought me, like somebody brought me Mullen when it was, I looked at it and I started researching. And I'm like, yeah, something's up with this. Like, we should probably buy in on this, and we bought in at like 50 or 60 cents, and I sold it at 193 for like 300% profit on my options. So like, I mean, good money on that. And then we discovered also by researching some more that some of their fundamentals are not great, and some of the stuff that they were reporting, like the $60 million in sales, that one of the guys actually started digging deep, and he found that that company wasn't even registered anymore with the state of Colorado, and like they were buying $60 million worth of vans when they're not even active. Like, that's not good. Like, that's pretty shady to issue a press release saying that somebody's buying up your vans, and when you start looking at the company that's buying them, they're not even in business anymore. Like, we went to their website, the website didn't work. Like, it was like, so this is the type of stuff that it's nice that you can group a bunch of people together, and people have different skill sets, and that's why I like the Discord. I think it's great that we have people from all walks of life, and was the volume lost the last time the squeeze got delayed until now? So that was a combination of dilution, to be honest with you. If you go back to, let me go to the daily, sorry. The issue with this one, why it didn't squeeze, because the volume was there. Like, we had volume, everything was increasing, these were these 3 days right here when it walked down. That was mainly spoofing, and like it was pretty low volume for the for what it was. Then it ran back up again, had decent volume, and then this is where they started actually spoofing and getting. And retail was still holding up pretty well. Where they got screwed was they actively started diluting around this time frame. I think it was in end of August, beginning of September. So they actually were able to get dilution started, I think, right around this area. And so at that point, it started bleeding down. So even though retail was still fighting, they didn't realize that they were going against active dilution. So that's where they were getting these extra shares. They were able to bleed them off through the market reset FTDs. We were still on the Reg Sho throughout this time, but at the same, what ends up happening then is every time there was an OPEX, they were able to just keep bleeding it down. So I hope that answered the question. But yeah, I was going to say it was because of dilution, because basically what happened was they noticed high short interest here. This is what retail did. Retail said, oh, there's high interest, let's squeeze this. So they moved it up, they squeezed it, right? Well, the shorts were shorting it because they knew dilution was coming. Because sometime back here there was active dilution because, or there was going to be active dilution because they violated what's called a debt covenant inside of their terms with a lender. So they had a lender named High Trail that they violated the debt covenant with. That was the trailing EBITDA. And once that was violated, they basically went through and they had to give up shares. So these shorts knew that they were going to get dilution. And so they just basically said, we're going to eat all these FTDs. And then we're going to go ahead. And then once we get these shares, we'll just short the hell out of the thing. And that's what they did. Very spicy, Anon. Anon's the real deal. He's trying to teach us so much, and I've learned more about order flow and mostly how they get away with all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, this is the stuff that they would teach you if you were on a trade desk in Goldman, but they wouldn't, obviously when you're a retail trader, they don't teach you anything. So if you have some people that actually understand how some of this stuff works and how they get away with some of this stuff, it's pretty interesting. It's hard to say when volume is a lot of people buying versus algos trading it back and forth. Yeah, I mean, you have to kind of just get a sense of why is it happening? Is this retail all FOMOing in? Is it institutions pushing it up too? There's lots of factors you have to take in, and once you trade a long time, you kind of just get a sense of you can tell this part over here has been retail. Once it starts going up, people start getting FOMO. That's retail. That's retail FOMOing in, and then they took advantage of the low volume and just pushed it down. But this part in the beginning was probably these 2 first days of some institutions or large money trapping the shorts. That looks what happened. Yeah, so HYMC was actively diluting through a ATM at the money offering. And they were doing that before they announced the AMC thing, and a lot of people looked into that. I actually wrote a DD for the AMC guys just because I felt like I knew what was going on, because they were trying to figure out how the price could be going, and I'm they're actively diluting the float, so that's what's going on. So I wrote a DD for that. So what percentage of retail trades qualify as retail? How can we make the estimation? So I mean, let me pull up this. So there's some sites out there that you can take a look at. This is supposed to be from today. So if you look at today, this is off exchange / dark pools. It's not always all dark pools, but off exchange means that they're basically taking these orders and they're never hitting the lit market. So right here, your $65 or 65% of the daily volume, which was this amount, was shorted. Or not shorted, but it was pushed off exchange, which means that those shares never actually hit the lit exchange, which is usually all retail. I would say 99% of this is probably retail. So imagine this: if you're you've got 35% buying pressure versus, you're taking away all the buy pressure basically. So you took out 65% of the buy pressure. You're only going to be able to have a tiny amount actually buying then each day if you take out retail's buying pressure. So let's see. And I'm sorry, it's hard to see all the questions, but mine is hopefully quick. Can't they cover quickly on days with 100 million volume? So if they did that, the price would skyrocket. So, say for example, they haven't really covered so far. Like if we actually pull up Ortex, they haven't covered anything. We've still been at like 42%. Like 40, we went down. They covered a little bit at one point, I think, but like it went back up again. So they reshorted it. So we've gone up now from $2 and some change to $7, and they haven't even covered a share, like net long. So like if they start covering, this is going to go to like 15, 20. If they had to do it all in one day, it would fly up like 15 to 20. So yeah, that's possible that they could, with 100 million in volume, they could cover it in one day, but the price would go from 7 to probably like 20 or 25 in that same day if they were to just buy all those. So, and at that point, they're also going to be stacking up probably FTDs on top of that. So there'll probably be a secondary spike because of that. Are options still a play with such high IV? So yeah, I mean, if you're buying deep in the money ones, they're fine. They won't be as bad, but they're still going to be more expensive. Like the more it's volatile, the more it's going to, be expensive for retail to buy those. So it's not a perfect scenario. The people who will make out the best were the ones that were holding, options prior to the run up, because back then the IV wasn't that high. But it's a way of making the market makers hedge, and that's why some people are doing it. But if you don't want to buy those, then that's obviously not, that's a factor. Like for some people, they're just like, I'd rather have the shares, and if you can route through IEX, then that's great. But for other people, if they're just going to buy and hold, then they're just going to become probably an FTD at some point. So I always feel like insiders and Reddit are trying to build FOMO so they can dilute and leave retail the bag. This stuff is getting more and more suspicious, just like a coordinated attack on retail. They've been doing that for years, Andre. Like, that's literally like the game plan for, I think, short squeeze and some of the other ones. You go into short squeeze as a smart money person to go raise money, essentially, or to go make money off retail when they're, obviously not smart enough to read through a filing. Because that's why they call us dumb money, is because most of the time we never read the actual filings like they do. So you learn a lot when you start reading through their filings. And that's one of the nice things about the Discord, is we have a lot of people that are willing to go through and read those filings and understand what a company's doing. So, but yeah, like that's what Wyckoff is. Wyckoff is a series of like accumulation. This is Wyckoff accumulation, right? So we're chopping back and forth. We hit a spring, and then we go up, right? This whole time, they're buying, but they don't want the price to go up too much because they're accumulating, and they want to make sure that they get as many shares as low as possible. Then, like, for example, if you were to, sell, right? The reason why you have sometimes secondary spikes and stuff like that is because you're trying to get as many sold up here at the top as possible. So you need to kind of chop it around a little bit before you go back down. So, that's what you have with accumulation and distribution. Like if you're distributing, you're selling. So you want to sell as high as you can. So that's why they always chop it around at the top, and then all of a sudden it just falls off a cliff. They're trying to get retail to FOMO in to their selling pressure, because if you just sell everything all at once, it's going to go straight down. So what you need is people to actually FOMO in, and that's when you get them to buy your shares that you're trying to get out at. Same thing down here. When retail is freaking out and selling all their shares, you're buying them. So these people that were selling down here, they're like, I can't take this anymore. We're going to go down to 0. We're going to go down to 1. They're buying all those shares. Smart money is buying the shares that retail is actually getting rid of because they're smart money and they know what they're doing, and retail is dumb. So retail sells when the RSI is way down here. This is not when you sell. You sell when it's up here. But that's the problem. Retail sometimes doesn't know any of this stuff, and so, yeah, of course. I mean, our Discord does a great job, reading through filings whenever they come out, and we've kept on top of the stock very well. So, if you're part of the Discord, get in there and do that. Yeah, the best thing they can do is get retail to sell. That's what they need. There's too many shares floating out there right now. Do I have a squeeze target? No, just up. Would it be better to buy 1K shares through IEX or exercise forward call options? Let's see. It would be better for your price to do it through IEX. I don't know where your name went. It moved for some reason. Okay, hold on. Chocolate sauce. Or chocolate 8 sauce, yeah. It would be cheaper for you to do 1K shares through IEX than it is. Obviously you make your own decision, but it would be cheaper if you were able to route through IEX than to pay the premium and then make them give you the shares. So if you have the ability to actually hit the lit exchange, then do it. That's going to be cheaper than, buying an option and then, but you do whatever you do. Any thoughts on Melvin Capital? Honestly, fuck those guys. GameStop's obviously a sore subject for me as far as like the second they turn off the buy button. And I've been in the market a long time. I've never seen them turn off a buy button on something that wasn't like a penny ticker that was being like squeezed or like they did that to a publicly traded like bigger company, and they turned off the buy button and told retail that oh no, this is for your own good. No, like fuck you guys. You literally, there's only one way a stock can go at that point, is down. And I was like, well, I've got other institutions that are willing to sell me more shares, but like they cut off Robinhood, which was the most popular app for people that were selling those. And it was, why they cut off that buy button? And it was mainly Robinhood. You know why? Because they didn't have your fucking shares at the broker, and they couldn't afford the shares. Like I said, those guys were convinced that the stock was going to go down, so they didn't buy your shares. But all of a sudden now at $500 a share, they can't afford your shares. They owed millions and millions of shares that they didn't have access to, so they needed the stock price to go down. Like, that's the plain and simple truth. Someone posted a 100K loss after selling puts for his Netflix. Yeah, that's the problem with selling puts. Like, you have to buy at what you promised. Like, he was expecting good earnings. He wanted to collect some premium, and now he's stuck, buying Netflix at whatever price he sold those at. So, I did the same thing. I had some $6 calls that I sold, and I thought that they were going to be in the money, and obviously we're now down in the fours. So, like, I lost $1.50 on those per contract. So I got a premium, but at the same time, I bought those more expensive than we are now. Now, granted, I think we're going to go up, so I don't mind, but it's it is what it is. But yeah. All right, I'm getting tired. I'm going to head off, but thanks so much, guys, for coming out and hanging out with me. We'll go ahead and I didn't post. Did I post the Patreon? I don't even remember anymore. There's the Patreon. If you guys want to make me do this full time someday, so I'd stream during the days and kind of call out stuff, we can do that. But in the meantime, I'll just keep trying to do this at night for you guys, and we'll do that, and hopefully everyone learned something. And if you didn't, maybe you can teach me something. Like that's the whole point of the Discord is we can all learn and teach each other things and make good decisions. So, all right, let's see. I will go head off, but thanks so much for coming out, guys, and I'll see you guys tomorrow pre-market and inside the Discord.